Doug McNish is an internationally award-winning executive chef and restaurant consultant. He's a best-selling author and passionate educator, celebrated activist, and a pioneer of society's plant-forward future. He's been working on plant-based and plant products for over 2 decades, and he's got a lot of expertise in launching and developing successful businesses, including along with many celebrities. You can find out more about Doug at Doug McNish, that's DougMcnish.com, dougmcnish.com, and thanks for listening. Today I'm talking with Doug McNish. Doug is an internationally award-winning executive chef and restaurant consultant, and he's a best-selling author, passionate educator, and celebrated activist. So Doug, I'm really happy to have you here. We'll obviously give some more information for the viewers in the byline of the session, but thanks for joining. You're definitely somebody with a profile that is much more in the public eye than people we have normally on this webcast. So getting interested to speak to you, and totally interested to hear what you have to say about plant-based and veganism. So why don't we start out, maybe give people a little bit of a background about who you are, what you've done in your career, and what you're working on now, just to get things kicked off.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm truly grateful that anyone cares about what it is I do day to day. So some days are more glamorous than others. So my work is I'm in year 25. Oh my God, I'm getting old, of the food industry. And I would say by now I've been doing plant-based / vegan cuisine for 18 of those years. So quite a bit of experience. I joke, and it's not a joke, but I do joke. When I first got into this, there was no such thing as almond milk. There was no Gardein burgers or Beyond burgers. It was literally lentils and kale. So I've seen that change. I became an entrepreneur in 2011. And as of recording, it's the end of 2023. So 12 plus years of grinding it out. And I've been lucky enough to write 4 cookbooks. 3 of the books have been awarded best in the world. I was voted best chef in the city of Toronto in 2017, which was it still is a huge honor. It's an amazing city with beautiful people, a huge population, tons of restaurateurs and restaurants. And to get that recognition was just like, holy shit, I can't believe that, because it wasn't something I expected or needed or wanted, but it just came. I've been lucky enough to do my thing globally and continue to grow and expand. There's more we could chat about, but that's a little bit about me. I'm also a father to a beautiful 8-year-old whom is my heart and soul. And he is just my life and love. And the business stuff is awesome. And I love the fact that I can make money and I get to do what I love to do. But I will say that, I would happily bag groceries at the grocery store too, because if it meant just having him in my life. So it's important to, for me to say that too, because it's not everything I am or everything I do in terms of career. It's like, there's many facets or parts of Doug, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I have a 10-year-old too. And I think it's great to be an entrepreneur. You definitely give up a lot, but you also have a little bit of extra flexibility to do some of those things that maybe some parents in the corporate world are not able to get time to do, right? So
he's home today, sick. He's home today, sick. He's in the other room playing PS5 right now. And so as soon as his mom said he's sick, he's throwing up, she's in the corporate world, so I took him. And again, that's one of the reasons I think I deal with the nonsense, as I like to call it, of entrepreneurship.
Yeah. People talk about that stuff and being glamorous. I don't know. Sometimes it loses its luster. But so what got you interested in vegan and vegetarianism and that type of cuisine so early? Is it a personal interest, or what was the cause?
I grew up in a really messed up home environment. I'm fine to share this. It's something I've really worked on, especially this year, is healing my healing my childhood trauma and going into it. And the reason I bring it up is, I started with drugs and alcohol really young. I was 14 and smoking weed and started drinking and got hooked on painkillers. And I started cooking professionally at 15. So if you could think about that landscape back then, I was already a bit of an I was already an addict. And then I get thrown into, yes, chef, and screaming and restaurants and this and that. And I mean, I loved it. I loved it. I thought I loved it. I mean, the little boy in me loved it, the wild craziness. And long story short, what happened was by the age of 20, give or take, I was pretty much an alcoholic and addicted to painkillers. And I just had one day an epiphany, and I said, I got to change my life. It was right around that time I started talking to a woman who lived in New York. I'm from Toronto originally, but I was in Toronto and started talking to this woman online randomly. It was a Jimmy Kimmel message board, random, and yeah, random. And she was a vegan. And she started filling my head full of ideas that animals have feelings and that you're going to look better and feel better. And I was like, no, fuck that shit. Started a 2-year relationship with her, decided to give it a try. And back then I lost 100 pounds and changed my whole life just with, I would say, quote, healthy eating, but also, more consciousness about what goes on in the world, and whether it's factory farming or sweatshops or organic or, all those sort of buzzwords that exist. It just made me more, like I said, aware or attuned to what goes on in the world and how things are produced. And that's sort of what led me on this train, God, almost 19 years ago now.
Cool. Very cool. And so do you not cook with meat or any animal products at all? Or will you still do that in your professional world, or you are just totally not part of your repertoire?
I know how to butcher a whole animal, and I'm trained in that world. And I know the classics, like that's how I was trained. And, I did a lot of, I would say about 9 to 10 years of classical training and the French food and Italian and things like that. But no, my professional career is strictly plant-based and vegan. And I love it, not just because it's a challenge, which it is, but, I've been able to carve out a niche. And, listen, I was scared as hell back then because there wasn't much business for me. There wasn't these opportunities that exist today. And now you turn on LinkedIn or the TV or whatever, and there's Beyonce hawking Beyond Burgers, or Kim Kardashian, or Kevin Hart is opening a vegan fast food chain. And, look back then, like I said, there wasn't even almond milk. So I love it. B, it gets to help people if it gets to help people on their journey to health or consciousness, it makes me super grateful. And C, I have this little niche that I've gotten good at, and I have this repertoire of recipes, and I've been able to build a business doing what I do, and traveling. And I mean, I always say it as we discuss the nonsense of entrepreneurship, and you laugh, and I think you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like being a parent. You can't understand it until you get into it. And but I mean, the experiences I've had and I still get to have in my career, I wouldn't trade that for anything. And I could finish this with you and have an email from Prague and saying, hey, we want to do a vegan tea cafe. I'm like, fuck yeah, let's go to Prague, So yeah, so it's a little bit about how I started and what I do now.
And so now I mean, it sounds like you do a lot of things, but what's the thing that you like doing most? Like restaurant consulting, cooking, cookbooks? Of course you're accessible to do a lot of things, but is there a certain aspect of it as an entrepreneur where you think it's more bleeding edge? I think I'm a bit older than you, but growing up, I can remember when my mom used to make tofu, like stir-fried tofu and things like this. We didn't eat a lot of meat growing up, and she was a member of one of these cooperatives where people would bring things from farms and sell them. You had to work in the shop once a week and things like that. So when a lot of this health food craze came along, I was like, yeah, that seems a little bit normal to me, but we still also, like, I would go to McDonald's, whenever I could. Like I was still like a normal kid, but I think that there's definitely been like a bleeding edge of this. It started out, I think it's been for a long time, a little bit of a esoteric, kind of on the crunchy end of things. And then it seems like with Beyond Meat, the fact that Beyond Meat like went public, this is what seems to have made people think, oh yeah, being vegan and vegetarian is cool. Whole Foods, I think, played a role in this, but you're much closer to it. So I'm interested to hear about your perception of like the evolution of what became cool and niche and in vogue, and then at some point it just becomes like, oh yeah, everybody does that, right? And so there's that type of adoption with any type of product and any type of change, is that at first there's a few early adopters, and then after a while everybody listens to them, or not listens to them. I'm thinking of music, because it's like that with music too, is like people will like learn about a new band that nobody knows about, and then after a while they kind of, they might sell out, and then everybody's listening to them, and then it's no longer cool. So like, where do you think we're at right now in that evolution? And, do you think it's gone faster in the past 5 years than it did previous to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good insights you have there and a lot of good questions. And one of the things that I laughed at is, I've been doing cooking demos publicly for 17 years, plant-based or vegan cooking demos. And one of my lines that I always say is, I don't want to make hippie food, right? Because there is that kind of, oh man, brown rice and sprouts, it's tahini sauce, it's so good. Yeah. And I love that once in a while. That's like one of my favorite grounding meals, is like tempeh and brown rice. But we don't all want to wear Birkenstocks and be chanting Om, right? That's just not how the world operates. And not that I think there's anything wrong with chanting Om and doing Birkenstocks. I actually did some of that last month in California at a retreat. We could perhaps talk about that later if you want. But I think the one thing that sells, that will never stop selling, is the idea of health. I think as human beings, we all want to be as healthy as possible. And we don't necessarily, we're all at different points of our life, and we don't know what that means sometimes. And, this year as of recording, I've lost 90 pounds, and I've just completely changed physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. So for me, the number one thing I'm spending on besides my house payment is my food. And it's what you put in your body determines who you are. I believe this. This is, people have, how did you lose the weight? How'd you do it? It's 90% what you put in your mouth. And that reverberates to your brain and your body and your muscles and everything. And so when Beyond came along, and you're right, I sort of saw that as the, oh my God, this is all changing. Because before that, it was, how can we make tofu taste really good? And how can we do gluten meat and things like that? And those things aren't bad, but they're not amazing. It's still somewhat crunchy.
It's like it's basically like flavored raw ingredients in a way. Like you kind of try to dress them up, and frankly, I like it. I mean, I think that I'm also happy to eat plain tofu, frankly. But
oh no, and so am I. And there is a place in the world for that. Like I make miso glazed tofu that is just, it's you taste the textures and you're like, holy shit, this is amazing. But it's still tofu. So there's still that hurdle to get through, especially like an older generation or a more closed off generation. So when Beyond came along and was like, here's this burger, it looks, feels, and they showed you the pressing tests and the flavor tests and how it bleeds, and it really changed the game. And it's been really cool to see it. And I started putting it on menus, and people were just flocking. And that Beyond sausage was another big one. It was like, here's the thing that is juicy and moist, and the flavors and everything is like.
You think it really delivered that far along, like towards being like real meat, or it was just good? Like it was just like just a good thing, right?
At that time, I mean, we have to go back to 2017-ish. It did. It was the leading thing. It was like, oh my God, this thing really is like a juicy burger. And until then, it was like quinoa and black bean burgers and stuff. And those things are great. But again, people who don't necessarily eat with macros or with, quote, health in mind, they just want flavor. And it's the same with me. Like once a month, I'm, even though I am counting my macros to a certain degree, and I'm more conscious now of what I put on my body, when and how much. It's like once a month, you just want a big, juicy burger dripping in sauce with loaded fries. And I'm happy to make that an Impossible or Beyond. And it doesn't mean my tummy loves it. But, we're creatures of pleasure. This is why social media exists. This is why the vices in this world exist. So I think Beyond, it was fantastic to see. And you asked me where it's going. I know for a fact that you have to have cleaner labels now. And in that food tech world, and partly what I do in the X Prize competition. We can touch on that if you'd like. You have to have a cleaner label because people are becoming more aware of this methyl cellulose, the pea protein, and you know how it's being harvested now and destroying the world. And so the cleaner label stuff is what you're going to start to see, and it's pretty cool because you know we're getting closer and closer to being able to recreate these cheeses or these meats or these fish without sacrificing for our nutrition.
So yeah, let's talk about nutrition, and then there's also taste. I think the industry focuses a lot on taste and like the media, but I mean, taste is one thing. Of course, you can have these organoleptic experiences that people, you know, they want that. And you sit down to eat. It's kind of one of those things you do that's pleasurable every day. And you know, you want to have that be the same type of experience. Otherwise, we'd all eat, you know, just like plain beans and rice, as you said, right? And people aren't that. That's not what people want to do. But from a nutritional perspective, you think they're at par? It's you can get a balanced diet from these products. Do you need to supplement them with anything? Is it equivalent to meat? Is it equivalent to a balanced diet? Because one of the things that I think that at least I worry about, I don't eat a lot of meat, but I make sure I do eat some because I do a lot of sport, and you just find that there are certain nutrients that you get from meat that are just hard to get someplace else. Maybe you need more of them. Maybe you need more careful about them. So I don't eat meat every day, but I do eat, you know, some meat each week. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that everyone is at a different point in their life, and also, I mean, listen, I don't necessarily think this is a one answer question because I'm 40. I too, I do CrossFit 4 or 5 days a week now, and spin and then stretch, and I get a lot of steps in, and I'm just always active. And you know, I really try and listen to what it is I need. And so I may have more experience than say someone from Wisconsin who's 68 years old and doesn't move their body. Mm-hmm. So I'm more aware of what I'm putting in, when I'm putting in, how much I'm putting in. So for it's iron, for example, or zinc or folate or things of that nature. I think what is super important for any human being to do is become as aware as possible of what they're eating, how much they're eating, why they're eating it. And that's been a big one for me this year, going through therapy, losing all that weight and saying, well, why was I 315 pounds? Why was I eating an extra 1,000 calories at 10 o'clock at night? Mm-hmm. And, you know, food is such a, I've been very open this year too about, you know, stopping drinking. Alcohol has been a huge one for me my whole life. As I shared, I started when I was like 14 years old and just been binge drinking my whole life. I've never called myself an alcoholic per se. I mean, although when I was younger, I would say I was pretty close to it. But you know, I guess where I'm trying to go is just like, why do we do the things we do? And food is one of those things. Like, I cannot go to the liquor store. I cannot go buy pot. Mm-hmm. Every day we need to eat. Right? It's one of those things that food can be used as a drug, or it can be used as, you know, a thing to propel your life. So it's such a nuanced discussion. And, you know, to answer your question, I think that we need to be conscious and aware of what we're eating and how much we're eating and where we're at. I'm 40, super fit now, or at least working on it. At least I think I am. And I'm just really conscious of, like, again, what I'm putting in my body and making sure I feel really good every day.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's important. And what about sustainability, right? So have you done analysis on these products from a sustainability perspective? You know, how sustainable, how scalable do you think that they are in producing the inputs that go into them?
I hate to say it, most of the Gen 1 stuff is shit for the world. I hope Beyond doesn't shit on me. Ethan, I love you. I did an event with him back in 2018. I was actually one of the quote influencers that helped release Beyond into a fast food chain in Canada. It was the first time that had ever been done in the world, I believe. And I met Ethan and chatted with him. And, you know, it's such a tricky thing because I've been part of things that scale. And, you know, you do have the best intentions going in, and then you get investors and you get employees and you get all these things. And like the whole system has to change, in my opinion. I kind of joke all the time and say, well, what is it we want versus what we need? And so much times we want daiquiris by the pool and vacations.
Mhm.
And in order to get there, we're almost willing to do anything, right?
Mhm.
But what is it we need? What is it we need? And it's the need. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with vacations, but how do we get there? Is it
Mhm.
by, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse. Is that okay?
You can do whatever you want. Yeah.
Is it by fucking over your fellow man? Is it by fucking over the environment? Is it by fucking over these poor animals that are tortured? It shouldn't be.
Mhm.
We can make money and profit lines and margins can be there by still doing the right thing, but the whole system has to change. So is it scalable? I think anything is scalable. I have this in the background. It says everything is figure outable. And it's one of my favorite mottos because it is. But is it the daiquiris by the pool? Or is it growing the pea protein in the right way? Is it the
Mhm.
daiquiris by the pool, or is it paying as little labor as possible? And then people hate you and they hate their job, and you have this turnover, so you have to make it turnkey, and then you lose the pizzazz, and it's a whole discussion. One of the things that I love, what we're doing at ProFillet. Now, ProFillet is I'm on X Prize. I'm a finalist in a global competition. I've been
Mhm.
working on this plant-based catfish for 2 years now, more than 2
Catfish.
years.
Catfish.
We're doing a whole cut plant-based catfish, farmed catfish. And we chose catfish because, believe it or not, this is a stat we came across.
Yeah.
Farmed catfish is worse for the environment and worse for the world than beef, than factory farmed beef. Mind blowing, right?
Yeah.
More emissions, more use of resources and everything.
Yeah.
So we've been working on it for more than 2 years, and we're about to bring it to the pilot scale. I'm actually traveling to Maryland next week,
Yeah.
and we're working, and we're going to do our very damn best. We have to match nutritionally. This is the X Prizes thing.
Yeah.
B, price parity. We have to at least match traditional catfish. And C, ideally, it's better for the environment. So we are a team of 5, and our minds have been working around the clock for the last 2 years to say, how do we do this? And we're getting close. We're getting really close. And it's been awesome. And we've had these discussions. We had this discussion last week. Is like, when we go forward now and we start doing pitch decks and looking to investors and VC companies, how do we stay true to helping the world, right? And again, it's that like daiquiris by the pool or the opposite. And I think that's going to be my next T-shirt. I don't know what you think about that.
Daiquiris by the pool or everything, or daiquiris by the pool or anything else. Yeah. Look, I think it's from what I understand, the inputs of many of these products is like, if you think about how much you need in order to replace meat consumption entirely, it's it's a lot, right? I mean, it's maybe not sustainable, but I think it's a mix of all of these things which allow us to be more conscious without totally changing the way that we've done things. Like if you look at things like ethanol in cars, right? That wasn't a thing 30 years ago, right? Except in some countries. Actually, some countries have been running on ethanol for a long time. It's like these different fuel mixes that you use, but it doesn't mean that everybody gets rid of their gas car right away and starts walking, which would be better for the environment anyway. But that I think it's like a multi-solution solution. And plant-based products may be one of that for some applications, but not necessarily for every single application. I get a little bit miffed by people who are so diehard about these things that they refuse to accept that it actually might be okay to continue to eat some meat. Also, just look at the way some meat is essentially harvested and farmed, right? Like even hunting is probably better than buying meat in the store, right? Because the animal is wild, right? It's otherwise probably going to be overpopulated, and it's healthier for you. I'm not a big carnivore or anti plant based, not at all. That's not the case at all. I just think that it's like in politics, like there's a middle ground that causes us to move actually forward. You know?
I think that veganism is a term that usually has a lot of emotion tied to it, and
Mhm.
I think that we need to be careful with emotion and what is causing us to make the choices we make.
Mhm.
And I think almost sometimes it's almost as simple as that. And hunting, I agree, it's better than. Listen, I could say to you right now, do you think it's right to hit pigs in the head with shovels and do these things to chicken? You're going to say no. None of us want to cause harm in this world.
Mm,
Unfortunately, with factory farming, this is what is the norm. And this is what causes a lot of people to get really upset and say, oh my God, I'm not going to support that. And so it's the same with everything in life. It's, again, these people that run these slaughterhouses, I'm sure Zachary's by the pool. So
mm,
how can we process more chickens more quickly? How can we pay our workers less money? Because each chicken, there's a $5 margin and right? How can we do it
mm,
and make, and so, but that's not what we need to be looking at. And so there is a certain, in my opinion, and we need to change the system around, but I'm with you. It's like the pea protein that's being grown for these burgers is destroying the world.
mm.
So,
In what
so is
way?
that an
So
option?
that's the first time I've heard that. Like that's a pretty strong term as well, destroying the world. Can you unpack that a bit?
It's called monocropping, and it's
Okay.
the almost the exact same process of factory farming animals. So in China, for example, they'll get a big, huge contract and a plot of land with a company. Let's maybe it's Impossible or any one of these um, burger companies that has come along, and it's to grow these peas as quickly as possible, as cheaply as possible,
Mm,
so they can be harvested. And that means let's destroy the land in order to do it, because if we could sell $500,000 worth of pea protein within a month.
mm,
That's not right,
mm,
right? And that destroys the soil. It destroys the soil, so nothing else can grow, or whatever else is grown after is void of nutrients. Nutrients are what we as human beings thrive off of. Our brains, our skin, our organs need these nutrients. So I'm agree with you. So it's like, do we now start farming these pea plants all over the world because we're saying, I don't think that's the answer,
mm,
right? What I do see in the food tech world now is pretty cool, because there's all these proteins that are starting to come out in more sustainable ways. And I think we're getting there. It's taking time. They're still pretty costly,
mm,
$20 a kilo, $18 a kilo USD, and
mm,
we need to get that down.
mm,
But like the duckweed protein and the chickpea proteins and the I was just on a call last week about chia protein and all these different things we can capture the protein from, and they could be harvested in sustainable ways. Like that's where we're going, and it's really
mm.
cool to see that. But again, that's, I think, the whole conversation about the Gen 1 products, what we're going to start to see in the next 5 to 10 years. What we already are seeing is a rise to how do we make this as clean as possible and still satisfy that, this tastes really good.
Yeah, yeah. And what do you think about lab meat, this project? It's a global project
Yeah.
now. Everybody's trying to do it, and I don't think anybody has really created a product that can be really sold at any sort of scale. I mean, it's great to see that there's regulatory approval, but even the ones that are at scale, from what I've heard, they're available pretty pretty sparsely, and they're probably pretty expensive, right?
Yeah. So there's 6 finalists left in X Prize. We are one of 6. And one of them is they're in China. And I met them in Singapore in May. They're very sweet people.
Mm,
And they're doing that.
mm,
And they say they're going to be the first to bring the price down.
mm,
Um, I, if we're talking about it from a sustainability standpoint, I think that it's a good idea, because we don't have to destroy the land for this. When it comes down to it, our earth only has so much resources.
mm,
Um, from a health perspective, I think that I don't know enough, and I don't have the education in my brain to say, oh, this is going to be good for you. I know that in speaking with the team in May in Singapore, they said that is their biggest hurdle. People think it's bad. Bioreactors. You think bioreactor, you think like the Toxic Avenger. At least I do. Those camping movies from the 90s, and not necessarily a steak. So I don't know, but I think from a sustainability standpoint, it's going to be really good for the future.
cool. Cool, cool, cool. So, one thing that I think influences a lot of these adoptions is celebrity, right? When you get, who knows, like whatever name, you mentioned a few of them before, and I don't live in the US anymore. I live in Europe, so I don't see as much of this. It's not as inundated, but you definitely saw that at least in the run up to a lot of the trial of some of the plant-based products during COVID in 2021, a lot of this is driven by like a lot of hype on social, right? And that is driven by influencers, and in some cases like actually major celebrities. I think you mentioned like Kevin Hart opening a vegan-based restaurant and things like this. Do you work with these types of celebrities, and what do you think about their kind of engagement and influence? Of course, they're being paid by somebody to do that. They're not doing it out of the kindness of their heart necessarily. They might believe in it. I don't think it's unaligned with their views, but nevertheless, like, in America, it's all about advertising and marketing and the money machine that drives that. Uh, do you think that that's being transparent? Do you think that it's actually helping the advancement of the industry, that it's causing people to make good decisions? And how do you interact with some of those personalities?
Yeah, well, there's some good questions there. I think first and foremost, I think social media is at a point in time where we're sick of seeing bullshit.
Mm,
And the more authentic and the more real you are, the more transparent you are, the more quote success you're going to have. And so when Kim Kardashian came on and said, I'm the Beyond Meat chief tester or whatever, I was like, all right, you gave her $1 million to spend 2 hours in your studio. Okay, I get it. Maybe it's going to sell some burgers. I mean, we're talking about it right now.
mhm,
Um, I mean, more so, I've actually been the influencer in my world and done that. I mean, I've worked with and cooked for and met a whole bunch of, quote celebrities, and it's really fun to do. And but I've been the influencer more than anything. So actually, from that standpoint, I would say that it works, but with authenticity, and so whoever contacted Kevin Hart to do the vegan fast food chain, it's smart, right? He's one of the biggest celebrities in the world. He's well known. Whether I mean they all sort of say the same thing. Oh, when I went plant-based, I did it. So it comes down to, well, you're selling processed fried food too.
mhm,
What's the messaging and how do you message it? Because if you're telling people that's healthy, it's still 1,000 calories for a sandwich, and you're still going to have to digest that processed food cooked
mhm.
in genetically modified soybean oil. Not to sound judgmental. I don't know. I would say honestly, where the world is going from what I see and from what I've been doing in the last year is authenticity and vulnerability are fucking everything. And people are sick of seeing social and like, look at me, I have 1 million followers, I'm vegan now. I've been opening up and sharing about what I do, and I just got asked to speak at 3 different events next year. And it's not because I necessarily make the best miso glazed tofu, which I do. It's about opening up and sharing and being honest. And I really hope to see that from more of these brands coming up. And again, Gen 2, I think this Gen 1 was like, okay, we can do this, proof of concept. Gen 2 is like, listen, we know we fucked up the world with the pea protein. And we know we fucked your stomachs up with the methyl cellulose. So here's what we're doing now. And we hope you like it. And we know we made a mistake. So I really think that's where we're going with all of that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. As I said, I think it's an evolution of all this. Certainly, there's going to be some companies that they can't make it, right? Like they've got the wrong part of their funding cycle. Things just didn't work out. They're going to get killed. Maybe some of them will even be good technologies that'll be picked up. Um, and then I also believe that you'll see the big food companies move in, right? Like you saw McDonald's. I think Nestle was making a burger product that was going to go into McDonald's, and they had like 3 failed launches of it in Europe alone, like between 2020 and 2022. I may not have my facts straight there, but I read about it several times. And, they're smart, and I think they now are totally out of it. They're just waiting, right? And so eventually, then, yeah, once you get the large companies that have that distribution into food service and that distribution into the stores behind it, they have the money, then I think you can really drive much more adoption around it. Um, you still have the meat lobby, I suppose, in the United States, but even those guys seem to be slowly but surely sort of losing that battle, right? So,
Yeah, I mean, listen, Tyson has gotten into it. They're the biggest producer of chickens, and Tyson and the pork company, it's not Cargill,
mm,
Cargill, they're into it. And then Pinnacle Foods, of course, is one of the biggest ones in the United States. They bought Gardein years ago, and
mm,
Gardein's everywhere now. You go to movie theaters and get a chicken tender sandwich, plant-based, and that's actually Pinnacle. So
mm.
yeah, we've seen that. And of course, there's going to be failures. There's people who jumped on the bandwagon in 2020, as you said, and um, it was a saturated market, right? And, Beyond has had some bad press. They've taken hits. Um, but, the next gen of stuff that I see that's coming is really cool. When there's companies like Chunk Foods, the 3D printing the cost is going to come down for that too. It's still really expensive, but the cost is going to come down. The cell-based stuff. But the tech we're doing with ProFlay is really cool. I can't share too much right now because we're still in the process of scale up and everything, but what we've developed is just easy, simple, scalable, replicatable. Doesn't require a 3D printer. We don't have to get, you know, fetal bovine serum or anything like that. And I think that the scientists that brought me on as part of this thing, it was smart of them because I brought something that scientists don't bring. And I think that's what a lot of these companies are missing, that sort of artistic, how do we do this in a kitchen, not just in a bioreactor? And you're going to start to see more of that, coming back to your roots and saying, okay, like, you know, how do we make this taste good? And so it's been pretty cool. And working with microalgae has been pretty cool too, because it brings a natural fishy flavor and a natural omega profile too.
Yeah, it's interesting. And what about protection of some of these technologies, right? Like what I'm surprised by is, and I'm not so close to the tech of it, you know, in order to create, you know, new white space technologies that no one else has done, to be able to say, oh, this is much better than before, or this solves this problem that wasn't solved before, you've got to have different approaches and different techniques, right? And those presumably will keep coming up. People will keep iterating and making these better. But along each step of the way, you've got to, I would think as an inventor, folks are realizing that unless their way of doing it catches on for some reason, meaning that it's truly better and no one else can crack that code, that they're going to be out innovated, right? Like in really fast innovation cycles, like actually your biggest problem is not like a bigger company or an established company. It's actually the next startup that just simply does it a little bit better, right? So what have you seen in terms of, you know, folks taking steps to both protect their IP in case it does become the thing, and then also just realizing that they have to stay ahead of like the folks that are going to open up their company in 6 months from now, and they're going to be able to learn from everything that you're doing and that everyone else is doing, right?
Yeah, it's two good questions. And you know, one, it's I've written 4 cookbooks.
Yeah.
So biggest questions I've gotten when I released them is like, aren't you worried about people using your recipes? And you know, no, because the answer for me has always been it's in how you showcase it. It's about how you execute. I can give you the recipe for the best vegan hollandaise on the market, or the best vegan charcuterie board, or whatever it is, but it's how you execute that that's really going to make you stand out from the rest. And so again, a lot of that is authenticity, it's marketing, it's, are you in this just for the money, or are you actually in this because you care? And you can taste that. You know, you go to a restaurant, I don't care if it's in Prague or Stockholm or Switzerland or New York or Toronto, you can taste the passion in a chef's food. And if that chef is going through a shitty time in their life, they're going through separation or divorce, or they just lost a family member, the food's going to taste like shit. I'm sorry, that's just what it is. We're human beings. So, you know, you ask about innovation as well, like that's part of it. And you always have to get up every day and do your best. And you know, I watch what's going on, but I also always try and push myself and strive myself each day to be better. And really, I think it comes down, we're human beings, we're not robots. And human beings, like everything comes from our brain, our mind, right? The chair I'm sitting on, the shirt you're wearing, your headphones, the books, that rocket ship that looks really cool in your background. That was someone's thought. That was someone's thought at one time, right? And so I have thoughts. How do you execute it? So, you know, I do a vegan egg with a runny yolk. I put the yolk in my 4th cookbook because I was like, F this. It's not about, I want people to know how to do it. Now, when you get into the tech and the IP, that's a little different, obviously. And my answer is kind of boring. It's lawyers. I don't know what else to say, but protecting yourself legally is probably the most important thing you can do. And I've learned a lot the last couple of years about that. So we have a great lawyer, we have great lawyers, and just having strong IP agreements. And
yeah, especially if you're going to create product extensions from that, you know, then you can protect your own follow-on innovations. We just got issued a patent. I was really surprised to get it, but you know, now when we have future versions of this, I might be able to protect it if I wanted to, you know, if it's important, we'll see, right? But I think getting like the base technology protected is important, but also being able to audit it, right? I mean, it's one thing to have protection, it's another thing to have to spend the money to defend it, right? And if you can't figure out that someone is actually really infringing your patents, because, you know, there's so much stuff out there in the world, what are you going to see? What are you going to know? I think it's tough, right? I think it's hard.
It's tricky. The internet, you can find any, when I got into this vegan world, there was like 6 cookbooks, and now there's, I mean, you can Google search and you could put in vegan aftershave recipe, and you'll find that. Like, never mind, the things like what that I've done over the years in my books or in my restaurants. It's I'm looking at a picture of a blooming onion on my other screen right now. I did a big, huge vegan blooming onion years ago for another restaurant, gluten-free, organic. It was fucking awesome. And the execution was really where we killed in that. I didn't create a blooming onion. That's carnival food. It's what you go and you eat when you're going on Ferris wheels. It was the execution. It was the marketing. But yeah, IP, lawyers, as you said, protect things. But, I think a certain level of me has learned to let go and just strive to do better. And if someone's going to copy me and it's almost like, okay, cool. But you know what? We were the first to do it, and you're never going to do it as good as us. And we're already on to, Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4, Gen 5. Like, one of the great things I believe about me is I have this vision where I can see the next 5 years. I always try and do that for myself. What do the next 5 years look like? And I don't try and control things to get there necessarily, but I get up every day thinking 5 years from now, physically, I want to look like a statue. Mentally, I want to be the clearest I've ever been. Spiritually, I want to be able to be on a fucking Himalayan mountain going, oh. And financially, I want to buy real estate. So, it's like, how do we get there? And so protecting IP, yes, of course, it's important. Trying not to control too much so you don't lose your sanity is important. But this is entrepreneurship. This is part of it, right? This is the nonsense we talked about.
Yeah. And of course, then you're also subject to the economic cycle and the fact that investors don't really know what they're doing. They invest money when they have it because they have to. And then, when an investor raises a fund, they have to invest it, right? Like, that's their job. Otherwise, the people who gave them the money will be like, why did I give this to you if you don't invest it in something? And the fact is that whatever they're investing it in is going to be successful or failure on a 5 to 10 year time frame where no one's going to remember. So what do? They invest the money. Of course, they try to invest it clever, and no doubt, right? But it's not like then when they don't have the money that all the ideas out there are bad. It's just that nobody has any money, right? And so I think that, like, you're just subject to all these things which you can't necessarily control, like wars and all the rest of that stuff, which it's a matter of timing, not direction in many cases, right? So that I think the direction is usually pretty clear. It's just a question of like, what's the path and then what's the timing, right?
I had a great conversation last year with a fellow business, friend, and he's exited one company. And, he said, business is almost like us just having therapy sessions with each other all the time, and it's true. And, you just hit the nail on the head. And it's been a big one for me, is like trying not to, like, I know what I can control, right? Can I get up at 4 a.m. and work out and meditate and eat right and take my vitamins and have my water and do what I need to do to come into and show up the best version of myself, right? That's what I do every day now. And the rest, I can't control if someone's in a fight with their partner. I can't control if they have an abuse, a substance abuse problem. So for me, it's just, doing my best and working through the nonsense and the day-to-day of entrepreneurship. But honestly, I'd have it no other way. I love it. I love the challenge. I've learned to come to embrace the ups and downs. I don't know about you, I think any entrepreneurs, like, sometimes you got tons of money to play with. Sometimes you're like, how the fuck am I buying groceries this week? And maybe it's not that extreme, but you know what I'm saying. And I've learned to lean into the bullshit, because I know the more bullshit, the more darkness, the more light comes. And you're like, okay, I'm going through a lot of shit right now. Well, that means that's going to turn, and that's going to be fucking awesome, And we're building ProFillet, and it's not easy. It's not easy. We have text messages, emails, discussions every day. But I know in 4 or 5 years, we're going to either license this IP or sell it. And I'm going to buy that real estate and start to do the things I've always wanted to do. And that really excites me.
Cool. Well, congratulations on that. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever had a real catfish. So if I have that product, I'll have to first have a real catfish and check it out. But yeah, looking forward to it. Well, listen, Doug, this has been super interesting and great to chat with you. Definitely wish you all the best in the future, and be watching what's going on with your ventures. Is this contest that you're in, is it televised or is it public in any way? Is there
X Prize is all over
Yeah.
LinkedIn,
Okay.
and they do Instagram, and it's X Prize Feed the Next Billion, and the finals are in July of 2024, and they will be televised. So
Okay.
our product
And
will be
you are
cooked
a
on
finalist
stage.
already, or is there another stage to go? You're
We're a
finalist
finalist.
already.
No, we're a
Okay.
finalist. We got
All
our
right.
we got our seed funding this year, and
Okay.
we're doing our thing.
Awesome. Well, we're definitely gonna have to look for that. I think that'll be cool to watch. Anyway, thanks so much, and all the best. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.